It's been raining a lot lately. We finally have a dry day. It's fairly cold. It is January. I'm going to take this apart so that we can actually turn this into the thing it's going to become. I want to sand the surface first while it's in one piece. I think that's going to be a little bit easier to handle. Things like the edges are going to be easier when it's in pieces. My goal here is just to get all of these scratches and stains and marks out of the surface, back to plain wood, so we have a nice clean basis to work from. This is solid wood as far as I'm aware, so I shouldn't need to worry about going through veneer or anything like that. We shall find out. Just before I get started, I wanted to show you why I think this is solid wood. One of the big giveaways is if you follow the pieces of wood on the piece and go round to the edge, you should see the end grain of the wood as you do here. Another big giveaway on this one is here's one of the finger joints, and that's actually where they've cut it. If it's veneered, what tends to happen is this sort of patterning in the wood here, where you've got the stripes, go to the edge and then they'll change direction, and you won't have any end grain visible. I think this is rubber wood. I'm not entirely certain. I'm not a very experienced woodworker. If it is, I've been warned it can be a bit of a nightmare. A little bit of an overview of the condition. You can see there's some scratches in it. Some are worse than others. There's a couple of burn marks. It's had a life, but the sanding should take care of that. This finish is ridiculously tough. I don't know what it is, but it's taking some cutting through. That's a lot better. The scratches all came out quite nicely. The only bit of damage I have a problem with is this little burn mark here. That's quite deep in the wood. But it won't matter for what we're doing. And as you can see, there's some dark marks in this wood anyway, so it doesn't jump out too badly. Let's dismantle it. I'm not sure if this table is held together with screws on their own, which are just these, or if it's glued as well, so we shall find out when I've got the screws out.
pockets these screws live in are really very deep, so it's very hard to see what you're doing. There we are, I think that's all of them. Oh good, it's not glued. This is the tabletop, and we're actually leaving this batten around the edge. This is glued on, I can see some glue squeeze out in some places. The reason we're leaving this on is because this is going to become the top. More on that later. Last bit to disassemble on this is I've got to get this bottom shelf out. I don't actually know how it's attached. I suspect there's a dowel in the corner there because there's no visible fixings. At the top, holding the leg in, you've got 2 Allen headed bolts, and then for holding the frame there's 2 pocketed screws each side. So I'm going to take these out first, and hopefully that'll let me get the legs off and get the base off. Yep. They just come out with a single dowel hole there, which just goes into the base, so that's nice and easy. I'm not going to take this piece apart just yet. I'm not sure what of it we're using, if anything, so I'll just leave this in one piece. The baseboard here, aside from being a little bit dirty from being in storage, that's pretty good, very usable. I also don't know what we're going to do with the legs. Don't have a plan for these. They are solid wood, but they're not made in one piece. Well, I say that, this one is. This one's a good example. You can see there's several different planks of wood in there. So I'm not sure what we're going to do with these sections. But we'll find out. Time to cut up these boards and make them what we want them to be. We've marked up what we need to cut off on the ends on this one because there are some dowel holes in the end which we don't want on the final shelves. You can just plug these with a dowel and do it that way, but we're not going to do that. We've measured the depth of the dowel in the leg. This normally goes into this shelf, and that tells us how deep the hole probably is on the shelf. Gone a little bit further than the dowel, so the dowel sort of stops here, so we've gone a bit further, and it's marked and taped, and Pat's going to just chop the ends off. That's the 2 ends chopped off, and no sign of the dowel holes, which is great. This wood's very soft, so it is very easy to work with, which is nice. Long board to do now, and we need to cut the middle panel out of this. There might be a way of knocking it out, I don't know, but we're just going to cut out what we need. For the sake of the jigsaw, you need to take out some of this trim, because otherwise it will try and kick back on you. I wonder how we know that. So that means getting one of these saws to go through so that we've got a nice clean cut on the trim, and once you've gone through and just into the base material here, you know it's not going to tear out. So Pat's going to do the honours and knock it out, and it's just that easy. Needs you a nice clean patch to work with, and now we can cut out the panel we need. Because we're just taking out the one board in the middle, which happens to be exactly what we need to take out, we've already got the guidelines on there. There's nothing to measure or mark, which is really useful. A table saw would have made that a lot easier, but Pat's pretty good with the jigsaw and much better than me at cutting straight lines. These are all of our pieces. This skinny one in the middle, that's what we're losing off the old tabletop. We don't need that bit. I've got 4 shelves here that need all the old finish removing, and then these big long ones, they'll need some finish removing off the back. There's not a lot. Then I can sand all the edges nice and smooth, get some fresh finish on, and then they'll be ready to use. Sometime later, I've been using random orbital with some 60 grit on it. I wouldn't normally go that coarse, but it's the only thing that's cutting through this finish. This is my last small shelf to do, and these are the finished ones. You can see the big difference in colour. I have to tidy up some of the edges. You can see there's a bit of a mark there from where we've cut it, and bevel the edges over, which I've done on these. Now, if I had a proper wood shop, I could do a much nicer, more even job than this. I don't. And for what we want, this will be perfectly fine. I also tried using the scraper on this finish. It is so thick, it comes off in like ribbons of plastic, and it's taken me longer with the scraper to get through it than it is the sandpaper, which was a bit of a surprise. Also, it makes a horrendous noise. It's really squeaky. So we won't be using a scraper on this. I have tried to use paint stripper on this before, and it just sits on the top and does nothing. I assume this is some sort of acrylic or resin finish that's designed to be very hard wearing, which is probably also why it's gone quite so yellow, although I have been warned rubber wood does tend to go yellow, whatever finish you put on it. All the panels are now ready for final finish. I re-sanded everything down to 240 grit, just to get rid of any sanding markings from that very coarse paper I was using. I'll be using Danish oil again. We have loads left over, so there should be enough to do all of this. And some old tea towels, because these are the best lint-free cloths I currently have. Just wipe on, and then it should be done. It's not a very attractive wood, and the Danish oil I'm using has a slight oak stain to make it match the rest of the furniture we're doing. You just wipe it on. This is 1 coat here, and we'll be doing 3 coats on this. First coat done. A little bit blotchy as it's just drying and the finish is soaking into the wood. Nice thing with Danish oil is you can actually turn the pieces over very quickly to do the underside, because it's not like using a brush on varnish or that sort of thing. It's not sticky. So as long as your point of contact where it's resting is very, very small, which is why I'm using these beams, you don't tend to have any problems. Pat spent some time preparing the shelves, so all the brackets are screwed on to the shelves first. We've done it this way because it's going to be easier to mark out the screw holes here on the wall with them on the shelves. Depending on how you're building things, sometimes it's easier to put the brackets on the wall and then the shelves on that. But for us, for what we're doing, this is the easier option. Let's get this up on the wall. You started it.
Bibbly, bibbly, bibbly. That'd be annoying if your phone just went meow, 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 meow when you had a phone call.